Hey everyone, JT is Reborn here, and welcome back to another edition of After the Movie. Uh, Excuse the quality of my voice. I just got done recording for the Valentine's Day special, so that'll be out Tuesday. I also did the ADR in it, so if my voice kind of goes during this video, that's probably why. And I'm also going to be covering this one, and there will be another video posted simultaneously that'll be on the Eternals, because I realized I never did an After the Movie on the Eternals, so I'm like, okay, so I'll cover that, and then Wakanda Forever, because I just watched Wakanda Forever. Eternals I had already seen, and there's been some time since then. I even kind of skimmed through it again, and we'll talk about that one after this one. But for right now, let's talk about Wakanda Forever, or yeah, and then next up I'll do Eternals immediately back to back. I don't have too much to say about that other film, but we'll talk about Wakanda Forever. So this finally came to Disney Plus. I didn't get to see this thing in theaters, much like the Eternals. I kind of skipped it, and I'm like, okay, I'll just wait for Disney Plus. And since Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania is coming out this week, and I'll go check it out. I'm not really all that hyped or overly excited about it because, quite frankly, Phase 4 was not very good. Spider-Man No Way Home was really solid. There's a few elements I like in Doctor Strange with Sam Raimi's direction, but it's kind of a messy movie. Thor: Love and Thunder, the less said about it, the better. Eternals, oh sweet Jesus, that was bad. Black Widow, not good. Phase 4 was not good. Phase 4 was a mess. Now they're just sporadically onto Phase 5. And they're like, forget that. And there's also all the Disney Plus shows that they released that I never watched. There was Moon Knight, there was Miss Marvel, there was She-Hulk. Hell no, I'm not watching that. I did see Falcon and Winter Soldier. I did see Loki. I did see WandaVision. I'm just like, I'm kind of just checked out of it. So maybe at some point I'll check out those other Disney Plus shows, but for right now, no. Because at some point you just got to cut yourself off because it's just too much to keep up with at this point. If you're not interested in what's going on. But anyways, all that said, let's talk about Black Panther Wakanda Forever. So right out the gate, this isn't as good as the first one. But at the same time, I understand the struggles that they had to go through in making this movie. When you lose your star, Chadwick Boseman, you're left at kind of a bit of a dilemma. You have to kind of rewrite this thing really quickly because Marvel has to pump things out. And you have to pay tribute, but you also kind of have to move on. We're caught in kind of a really tough, tricky situation. And they handled it pretty well for the most part. There definitely is a lot of love and tributes to Chadwick Boseman. It's a real shame what happened to him. But at the same time, it's like, what do you do in that situation? So I am forgiving of that regards. Should they have recast him? Maybe. Or should they have just waited to make this movie a little bit until a little bit of time has passed? Probably would have been for the better in that regards, because you're just caught between a rock and a hard place with this one. So on the one hand, you're losing your main star. You have to kind of write something around that, and that's a real challenge. So are you left with a dilemma of whether or not you should recast him? So it's a tough situation. They went with the not recasting him, just kind of telling a story as is. So I understand the dilemmas and all that. In terms of tributes to that, this movie is very respectful and loving to Chadwick Boseman, and there's some nice tributes to him in this thing. The best thing about this movie is the tributes that they did to the lead actors. So I got to give props right out the gate. As the movie opens up, they had a bit of a funeral. I do have one little complaint about that. Where are the other Avengers? They showed Black Panther showed up for Tony Stark's funeral, but nobody from the Avengers showed up for the King of Wakanda, Chadwick Boseman's, T'Challa's funeral in this thing. That's something that bothers me. Not even Bucky, not Sam, Bucky especially, considering all that the Wakandans did to help him out through all the traumas and tribulations that he had in terms of being mind controlled as the Winter Soldier. They really helped him out, and you mean to tell me that he's not coming back to, go to the funeral of somebody? Because even in Falcon Winter Soldier, he was still around. It's just kind of something that kind of bugged me a little bit. But, they had the funeral, they had the tribute to him. It's well done, it's well handled, and very respectful to him. There is some good acting in here, particularly from Angela Bassett, and I know she's been nominated for Best Actress, and she's really, really good in this thing. There's some good performances here and there throughout. And then, yeah, that's where my praises kind of end for the film. Because even after watching it, I'm not too huge a fan of this one. I think the first movie is a lot better than this thing. As soon as the villain this time around doesn't have the on-screen charisma or presence that Killmonger had in the first film. Michael B. Jordan's a much better, more charismatic villain, and I was actually more invested in his story. This time we have Namor, and as soon as he shows up with his goofy little water wings for feet, I just started laughing. I'm like, this is the villain. I could not take him seriously. And again, he goes through a lot of the same things, hates the world, relationships with humans and all that other stuff. Just kind of some of the stuff we've seen before, and it's just kind of a messy movie. So you got that going on, and then you got the stuff with Wakanda, and they're kind of hypocrites in some ways to where they're okay to break laws and all this other stuff, and they never face any repercussions. Then we have Riri Williams, who's introduced in this thing, and she's immediately kind of forgotten about. She's just a plot point, just to, oh, she knows how to build this thing with limited technology, and she's the smartest thing of all. She's going to be the new Iron Man, so if you like Tony Stark, well, too bad. Here's Riri Williams. That's pretty much her character in essence. She gets basically forgotten about in this film, and just her whole thing is she knows how to like build a vibranium detector, and apparently, and this is what Namor's after, like, we're gonna kill this one kid because apparently nobody else knows how to build this thing except this one kid who's just in college right now, because nobody else on the planet is apparently smart enough to do so. Maybe she told somebody. Is he just gonna go an endless cycle in that? Because again, people want vibranium, and Wakanda's hoarding it all because they have their reasons for it. They don't trust people, and okay, fair point. And then they also find vibranium at the bottom of the ocean with not Atlantis. I forget what the name of it is. But anyway, so Namor's doing his thing. And then, so we're left to figure out who the new Black Panther is going to be. In this case, it's going to be Shuri, even though Okoye would be the much better choice. She's more physically, she has more combat training. Shuri is like the brains, okay? Just having her be Black Panther, the new Black Panther this time around, I don't know, it doesn't seem believable to me. And even then, there's some real ridiculous things that kind of happen in this film. It really does drag and has some pacing problems. And Martin Freeman, every time he showed up, it just dragged the movie down even more. Why do we even have this guy in this thing? He's not interesting at all. He's has no charisma like he did in The Hobbit. Every time they cut back to this guy, it just started to groan. And then you have Julia Louis-Dreyfus in there, who's just there to set up other things in the MCU. And it's kind of messy in that regards. Score is pretty decent for the most part. It's not as good as the first film score. Ludwig van Gorason or whatever, because he's always Ryan Coogler's go-to guy who did the Creed and he did this other this thing right here. He's a good composer, and there's some good stuff there. But then, like I said, the rest of the thing, action sequences, they're just kind of hokey looking at times. Not as bad CGI as in the first film, but just the first film had me more invested with its story. It really is a film that misses Chadwick Boseman, and again, that's part of the theme of the movie, but he just had a better on-screen presence than Shuri did this time around as the lead. It just feels kind of an empty movie, and again, I get that it's a movie dealing with loss and grief, but it just, I don't know, it really just wasn't doing much for me. And there's a few things that, like I said, kind of bugged me. None of the Avengers showing up for T'Challa's funeral was a big one right out the gate, because he was, like I said, he was a friend to a lot of them. Why isn't he there? They showed up in Wakanda before, so they've already established a lot of them have been there, but it's just the thought that none of them show up for his funeral. And don't tell me it's only Wakandan's tradition, yada, yada, yada. They can work around that. I mean, it's the Queen of Wakanda. Like, she lost her husband, she lost this. And also, it feels like in some ways they kind of backtrack some of the stuff Wakanda was doing at the end of the first movie, of just opening things up for the rest of the world and all that. They're kind of backtracking a little bit on that, and to an extent, but then again, new leadership and all that, so I guess that's the case. The final fight between Shuri and Namor, okay, so in the previous film, Killmonger and T'Challa had this big, huge fight, really poorly done, mind you, looked like a PS3 video game, clearly rushed and all that, and even despite a $200 million budget, you wouldn't have guessed based on that fight scene. They get into the fight, and it's really bad CGI, but basically he gets stabbed at one point. And then he's pretty much done at that point. Shuri gets impaled, mind you, like right through her, the same injury as Killmonger did, and she's totally fine afterwards. It just completely no-sells it, and I just was left scratching my head like, how the hell is she not feeling anything severe? She gets stabbed, she pulls the thing out, does some flippity-flip stuff, and beats Namor. And then they just kind of let him go, like, let's just be peaceful right now. I know we just killed a bunch of people and had this big fight, but let's be peaceful, and then nobody will know we're here. How is she still alive like that? I mean, if, like I said, it's kind of ridiculous in that regards. Maybe it's this new herb that they built, which is done utilizing some of T'Challa's DNA and a few other things, and that, so she can become the new Black Panther because Killmonger burned the entire crop. Something along the lines of that. It just, I don't know, it felt kind of ridiculous. And then, of course, there's the one scene where Riri and that escapes, or they have to like kidnap Riri Williams and all that. A bunch of police officers are outright like murdered and destroyed in this thing based on this chasing, and there's no repercussions for Wakanda or anything like that. I guess it's all just kind of covered up. I don't know, like they're just trying to do their job. Like you're driving around, you're illegally entering the country and all that stuff. But you know, if Wakanda does it, it's okay. But if anyone else doesn't, it's just kind of whatever. But but like I said, there's some pacing things. The movie does drag a lot, especially towards the middle act. And the tributes to Chadwick, like I said, are nice. There's some good acting from Angela Bassett. I still have gripes, like I said, about the funeral bit, but it's not a movie that I really want to go back and revisit anytime soon. It just didn't captivate me all that much. I think the movie's just kind of all right. Wasn't a huge fan of it. Don't hate it or anything like that. It's just kind of forgettable, if I'm being honest. Outside of the tributes to Chadwick, there's really not much that kept me interested in this thing. I had to kind of like pause it and then like take a few breaks to try and get through it. It wasn't for me. So like the first one's a lot better than this one, just from a story standpoint and a few other reasons too. So yeah, this one, like I said, I understand the difficulties they had making this thing, and like I said, it's a tough challenge for what they had to go through. It just, as a film itself, again, the tributes to Chadwick were nice and there is some decent acting, but just wasn't enough to save this thing. And also, like I said, Okoye should be the Black Panther over Shuri. It makes more sense. And oh yeah, one other thing too. Apparently T'Challa has a son in this thing, but the mom knew about it, but Shuri didn't. Like that just seemed kind of a little off there. So like, what if the mom passed away and you know, his T'Challa's girlfriend or whatever passed away too on like her mission? Then who would have taken care of this kid? What if Shuri was the only one left standing? She would have never known about this kid's existence until like the end of the thing. I don't know. I feel like you should have told Shuri and the mom about the kid out there. So T'Challa's son. So yeah, that was one thing that kind of irked me. But again, I know they had to rewrite this thing, and it was very difficult to kind of get this thing made, given the situation that they had. And of course, Marvel has to pump things out. Probably, like I said, probably should have waited another year or two to release this thing. Again, I get they have, you know, movies to make. They got to keep things up with their phase and all that. But it just, I don't know. It just wasn't really a movie that I enjoyed all that much. It's just all right. So there you go. Those are my brief thoughts on Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Wasn't a huge fan of it. Don't hate it or anything like that. It's just not something I feel like going back to revisit anytime soon. It's not as good as the first one. And like I said, I understand some reasons behind some of the story choices and what they did and the situation they're caught up in. But maybe sometimes it's best to just kind of leave things alone for a bit and then regroup and make this thing, because they kind of had to quickly turn around and rewrite the whole story, and it definitely shows. Also, don't bring Martin Freeman back for these movies. Like everything involving him is just a chore. It just wasn't that great. So, anyways, if you have any thoughts on Wakanda Forever, let me know in the comment section down below. Be sure to like this video, share it with friends, subscribe to the YouTube channel for more content, all that other fun stuff. I'm sure I'll probably get a bunch of dislikes for this one, but hey, you know what? I gotta be honest. So there you go. On to me talking about the Eternals next, and then, yeah, so peace.